All right. Well, welcome everybody to Talking Niagara this morning. We're here Wednesday morning, not Tuesday morning. That was the time that we were supposed to be here. But anyway. All right. So welcome everybody. And okay. So when he was asked about if he would approve the $14 billion arms package to Taiwan, Trump has been held up for months. Trump has basically said that's up to China. Excuse me.
Well, they're both playing the game. China told Trump, stick your nose out of Taiwan. Biden was a strong supporter of Taiwan, as the Americans have been since the war, have been a strong supporter of Taiwan. That's part of their first line of defense against China. They devised that strategy many years ago. However, now they're kind of weakening on that. They're kind of, Trump is kind of saying, well, the Western hemisphere is mine and the Eastern hemisphere is yours. I'm not too interested in Taiwan, which is a real problem. Meanwhile, the Chinese are not too. They don't respect Trump very much at all. Now I'll read you something I came across this is from back in January, and it was in The Economist magazine. So a bunch of scholars in Beijing came up with this satirical announcement, and they keep this up on top. They satirize Trump a lot. They make fun of him quite a bit, which is unusual for the Chinese, who are so laid back and serious. So they said, "Thank you, Mr. President, for driving away America's traditional allies. Thank you, Mr. President, for showing the world China is more trustworthy and stable. Thank you, Mr. President, for putting financial pressure on China, pushing it to innovate. And thank you, President, for showing the U.S. Thank you, Mr. President, for illustrating America is the in its imperial twilight, the decaying and hypocritical power."
Yeah.
This is kind of like the undercurrent. So when Trump goes there and says, "Well, China's wonderful" and all this, Chinese, on the other hand, are making fun of him.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
So they don't have a whole lot of respect for him. They believe now. Of course, you've heard about the Thucydides trap. Now, one of the reasons why China is making that very clear to the U.S., it says we can avoid the Thucydides trap. And the Thucydides trap is a thing that came up with the historian Thucydides, who realized that in world politics, and this he'd come up with 2,400 years ago, that a rising power is a threat to an existing power. And so inevitably they'll have a conflict. So a rising power, a power that's getting more and more stronger, and a traditional power is beginning to decline a bit, there will be a conflict. And so they believe that China is the rising power and the U.S. is the declining power. Yeah. Trump said, "Yeah, I understand that," but he meant when the United States was run by Biden, not by under me, right? We're a rising power under me. We were declining under Biden. So it's Biden with that guy.
Everything Biden did was wrong. Now that it's a year and a half after Biden. Yeah.
I can't handle it. Biden beat him in an election, and he still can't handle it. But so basically speaking, the Chinese believe that they're an ascending power, and the United States is a declining power.
The Chinese are talking long term, right? They're not talking about a deal done tomorrow or one done next week. They're talking about longer term. That they're in the rising ascendancy, right? Not individual deals. Whereas a power that is declining talks wonderfully about the next deal they just did, how wonderful this deal was, how exciting this deal is, because they've got nothing to talk about because they've just lost 6 deals, right?
Well, yeah.
And you think about how the British were after the end of Second World War, when you see the decline in the British Empire, decline in the power of Britain, right? They would jump onto something. British government would jump onto something that a major achievement, and how great that was for Britain, right? Well,
yeah, and then when it was a big power, it just took that for granted that they were going to have accomplishment after accomplishment. But when they're declining, they focus in on minor things, saying how wonderful it is.
Yeah, and exactly. And the other thing that happened in Britain is, of course, that who suffers when the decline, when the power, the power of the country suffers. The people who suffer the most are actually the working people of Britain, the people who need to get work every day. They're the ones who are losing jobs, etc., right?
Well, this is the ascendancy of China is in no small part from U.S. and Western industrialists and investors who took out manufacturing out of North America and Europe and put it in China. And if you're looking for a reason, you kind of shot yourself in the foot right there, because people thought they could make a lot of money and then control the ascendancy of China. Well, they couldn't, of course. Yeah. And hi, good morning, Nancy. So anyway, the $14 billion that has to go to Taiwan, that could be $14 billion worth of munitions. I don't know what Trump's going to do, if he's going to sort of make a deal with Xi. He says, you take Taiwan and I'll take Greenland and Venezuela. How about that? You don't bug me with Cuba, and I won't bug you with Taiwan.
Talking about Cuba, though, we'll come to that one later on, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, so I think pretty much what they're doing here is, I think Xi and Trump came together and started to divide the world. This is mine, this is yours. Xi pointed out, look, don't mess with Taiwan. That's ours. That is a red line for us. That was, although now the world made a big mistake, because Japan ran Taiwan for 50 years, from 1895 to 1945. Yeah. And in the end, the world insisted that that Japan surrender it to China. It didn't think that it should surrender it to the people of Taiwan. The people of Taiwan, many of them were quite a bit different from the Chinese. They are now very much a minority in their own island of Formosa. That is the island of Formosa, by the way, which is Taiwan. We forget that. So when Chiang Kai-shek lost against Chairman Mao in the war, the Civil War, they went to Taiwan and established a second Chinese government and claimed it was the representative government of China. That, of course, could not be sustained, but they made the big mistake of not proclaiming an independence. And there was a zone there where they could have. Actually, Pierre Trudeau actually went to Taiwan and said, look, while there's still time, declare your independence before China gets too strong. Yeah. If China gets too strong, if you can declare your independence, then you can get all the United Nations to recognize you, and you can establish yourself independent of China, which they did not do. Unfortunately, Chiang Kai-shek was a bit of a thickhead, and he still thought that he was the representative of the Chinese people. And they didn't do that. And now they got into this mess. There's no way out. And sooner or later, China feels that it's going to take Taiwan. Now, only 7% of the people of Taiwan want reunification with China. Yeah. Only 7%. Yeah. So there are some of them feel that they might be able to establish a sort of an autonomous, semi-autonomous zone, but as soon as the Chinese the military puts a foot in, then it's gone. you don't even hear of Hong Kong anymore, do you? That's
Yeah,
because the independent entrepreneurial spirit of Hong Kong is pretty much dead now, as
pretty
far as
much
I
dead.
know.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
the Chinese government did
You
that.
do hear of it once in a while, but it's usually when it's associated with a Hong Kong dissident, like what's his
Jimmy Lai.
Jimmy Lai. Yeah,
Yeah. Meanwhile, he came up. Jimmy Lai, of course, is important in this area because he's had some investments in Niagara on the
yeah,
Lake. But he came
yeah,
up in the discussions between Xi and Trump, and Trump just kind of pushed him off. He says, well, he was an agitator, irritated these people. So here is Jimmy Lai advocating for democracy. And it's the new American policy under Trump. We don't care much about democracy. We don't care
yeah.
about that much at all. We care about power. And Jimmy Lai is the guy advocating for democracy, but we don't care that much about that, you know.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So there's okay, no, not that one. I'll pass on that one because we didn't have a. So Ribfest. Okay, we got kind of two Ribfests this year in Niagara Falls. One which is by the Stanford Center Volunteer Firemen's Association, which happens May 22nd to 24th. So that's this weekend. So if you want to go to that one, that was a Fireman's Park this weekend. Then we got the Ribstock Festival, which is hosted by Gig Guys Production and Event Services, which is June 19th to 21st, Father's Day weekend.
Well, what about the money they're shelling out, the $15,000? What about that? What's your opinion on that?
Well, the big problem here is that where's this money? Where's the money going to?
Well, it's going to for the Ribfest. Well, why should we put up the money for that?
Why should we put up the money for it? Yeah,
yeah. They went to the city council and asked for 15 G's, and they're getting it. And the only dissenting voice was Lori Lococo.
Who is this? Stanford Center Volunteer Firemen's Association or Ribstock?
No, it's the first one.
Yeah,
it's the one that's going to happen on the 22nd. I'm trying to look for the articles. It's been a few days since I've read about it. So what about that? You know, I mean, that was a part of the council meeting. It was in the paper too.
If they're going to make money, surely, why would you be asking the municipality for money?
Well, they did
there to make money, right?
Well, the thing is, it's an event. It's once the Rotary Club had it for 20 years, and then they found it very difficult to maintain it for two different reasons. Less and less people were coming out, and of course, during COVID, that was a problem. Yeah. And less people are available to volunteer. So it was a volunteer thing. However, and they weren't making enough money. And of course, the money they were making was for charity. So it makes me wonder why, in order to keep this festival going, we have to shell out 15 grand. Now, I don't know if I've got that completely right because it's been a while since I've read the article. I'm trying to look for it right now.
Yeah.
I posted it here. You can find it too. So, opinion contributors. Jesus. It must have been a while ago since I put it up. Oh, here it is. So, location, Niagara Falls Ribfest, returning with $15,000 in support from the city. So only Councillor Lori Lococo questioned the fairness of financial and in-kind backing for the event, saying the request should have gone back to staff for consideration. I think she's right. New date, new location, new organizers. Well, why, so the Niagara Ribfest is returning to Fireman's Park, but the problem is, it's coming at a cost.
Yeah.
Last year it was run by the Rotary Club Sunrise event.
Wasn't last year. It was a few years
ago. After 20 years, citing rising costs and failure of attendance. But just when it appeared Niagara Falls would be without a Rib Festival, two more came along. The first reimagined in Ribfest in June 13th. That's the other one. But the Ribstock took place in Farmers Park organizing because it goes on to that history. This coming weekend, Ribfest is taking place at Fireman's Park under the leadership of the Firemen's Association, but a month earlier, not on Father's Day, which was traditional.
Yeah.
Ribstock is slated for the one on June 19th. So Ribfest organizers appeared before the city council recently, say its transition creates an opportunity to revitalize the event while positioning Fireman's Park as the premier destination for large-scale community festivals, and I said blah blah blah. Short times and made operations planning, entertainment, booking, vendor, blah blah blah. The organizers' appearance came with a crest with $14,900 in funds and special in-kind support from the municipality, which was approved by council.
Yeah.
This includes $6,500 for Expo. Yeah. So, anyways, they can't fund this. These things are supposed to be charity makers. So why doesn't the city just give $15,000 to charity? You know, if they want to support charity, give $15,000 to charity. What, like, you know, it's nice to have this event, but we have two rib fests. Why two? We're supposed to have one during Father's Day, and that worked for the Rotary Club for many years until it didn't. But I don't think the Rotary Club came.
Well, the thing is about this. Remember, in St. Catharines,
did Rotary Club ask for money for their event from the city?
No, they never did they?
Not that I remember.
Yeah, and the thing is that the Rotary Club never asked for money from the city, but yet the city, you know, St. Stamford Centre Volunteer Firemen's Association does. Usually these are self-funding, aren't they, Dave?
Well, here, it's supposed to be, and anything extra goes to charity, right?
Yeah.
So the better part of 2 decades, the Rotary Club has been the organizers of the Ribfest, and they did a fantastic job. They built an amazing brand.
Yeah.
Okay. But due to circumstances, the Rotary Club no longer had the means to put Ribfest, and the community was about to lose it. So they want the city to kick in. Well, is it worth it? And Laura Coco was the lone counselor to vote against the requested support. Yeah. I love Ribfest. I love Farmers Park, but we do have a process, she says. There is a fee waiver process. I would prefer that this be deferred to staff to get our staff's comments about how they can assist and put it through the fee waiver. Even though you might be very worthy of it, it's a great event. I don't feel comfortable approving it as it's sitting now. And I think, look, is she the only one that uses her brain at council? Everybody's afraid to vote against Ribfest because they think, well, if I vote against it, I'm going to get trouble from my constituencies.
Yeah. I would support her view on that one. But you know what the press would have said if I'd have been on council and voted with Laurie Lococo. Look, vegetarian Peter doesn't like Ribfest. You know, that's what the press would have been saying about me.
Possibly. I think they were more interested in the money, though. And to me, there's not going to be a vegetarian revolt. I'm pretty sure of that.
No, to me, it's about the money, and the city shouldn't be funding this.
Well, Laura Lococo's right. There is a process, a fee waiver process.
Exactly.
And everybody wants to jump on and say, "Oh, look at me! I'm a great guy. I'm gonna vote for this 15 G's that comes out of the taxpayer pocket." You know, just so you can have your Ribfest. Well, the city can incur or take on some of the expense, but it has to be done in the proper way. Now, now everybody and the brother comes up with a event and says, well, you get $15,000 to Ribfest, didn't you? How come you're not going to give it to me? And Betty Zoom says, Sudbury is going through this and more. What's that about?
Yeah,
Do they have a
I'm
giant
just putting the comments up. I'm just putting the comments up. The priorities of this city is totally backwards, and the Rotary Club was never given help like this. Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Yeah. Nice one, Mike. Definitely. Like, so where are we going with this? Like, yes, they built Rotary Club built that brand. And actually on Father's Day, sometimes my kids would go to the Rib Fest and bring me home a bunch of ribs, because it was Father's Day. And here is I Wilkins News saying, was it not Chris Dabrowski who took this over after the Rotary Club shut it down, and now we're forking over thousands of dollars? I don't know how much Dabrowski has to do with this. There are the two, of course. There's the Rib Stock and the Rib Fest. So I don't know which one Dabrowski is supposed to be involved with.
Yeah, I think Dabrowski is involved with the Rib Fest, the Rib Stock Festival. Is what Dabrowski's group is. He's supporting that group, I believe. All right. Okay. This is even worse for Niagara Falls because it takes away. It breaks the Ribfest up into so many different things. Ribfest was a good money spinner for a period of time, which actually was good for charities, and I applauded Rotary Club for running it. But you see, they're still running Ribfest in St. Catharines in the Rotary Club there. So how come they're successful and ours was not?
Well, I'll tell you, Newstag has said something that's very clear. She says the aging service clubs just were not able to get volunteers out. So I think that had more to do with it than the cost. I'm not so sure she's right about that, but what she is right about is the service clubs are aging. Nobody wants to join them anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to put their time in to do that. Don't know why. There's this anyway. Councillor Mona Patel says she helped the Ribfest run a couple of times, adding that it was months of planning, et cetera, et cetera. She must be part of the Rotary Club. I'm so glad it's in good hands. Dabrowski says he's all about process. Well, they didn't follow the process, did they? But the Ribfest event, which organizers say is expected to draw more than 10,000 attendees throughout the weekend, is in less than 2 weeks. So maybe that's why he's objecting to the process and just going, I'm just glad we're not losing the event, because there is nothing worse than the event coming for 10, 15, 20, 25 years and then over money or COVID losing the event. Okay, but we had one event. So why does the city have to pony up money for one of the Rib Fests and not the Rib Stock?
Yeah.
Has Rib Stock tapped the city council for money? Like the Rib Fest? So we have two now. We have these two.
Yeah.
Rib festivals.
And it's divisive. It's divisive. It's bad for Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I don't know. Maybe the city can sustain two rib festivals. Everybody likes ribs.
But again, one of the things about
it is not a vegetarian likes ribs.
Yeah. No disrespect to Fireman's Park, but for example, if we look at where the Ribfest is in St. Catharines at Montebello, that's actually smack in the middle of town. Everybody knows where it is. It's local, and a lot of the people who come would be local. And we don't have that. We don't have that same sense of community in Niagara Falls. I don't know that Fireman's Park is the best place for it. We could have found because Fireman's Park is so distant for many people.
There is no municipal support for Ribstock. I just
I I didn't think there was. No, Ribstock is entirely for profit.
Of course, I spelled it wrong.
It doesn't help. Yeah. Yeah. Ribstock is entirely for profit. All right.
So none of that money goes to charity.
I don't believe so.
How
No.
much money from Ribstock in Niagara Falls, Ontario, goes to charity?
Or maybe some of it.
Find out right now. For the Niagara Falls, Ontario Community Festival Ribstock, all festival profits go directly to charity.
Oh, they do. Okay, there you go then.
Organize, operate the event on not-for-profit basis, with every dollar of the proceeds directed to Pathstone Mental Health, Project Share, and Boys and Girls Club of Niagara.
Oh, there you go. I stand correct.
There you go.
Thank you.
So if they can do it, yeah. So definitely, where does the money? So they're not asking for community support.
Yeah.
Does Ribstock actually get community money from the city of Niagara Falls? Find out. I should have done this research today. Ribstock is built entirely on community rather than operating on funding from Niagara Falls, city of Niagara Falls. So there you go.
That's what
right?
you
The
said
festival's
before.
operation
That's
budget
what
is
you said
generated
before.
sponsored local business, vendor fees, and volunteers, while 100% raise goes to local charities.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is why do we have to have the Ribfest and fork over 15 G's for it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'd prefer that we have the Ribstock Festival and only that, and be less divisive. And you know, I've got no objection to who they're putting the money to. All right.
Where do the proceeds of Ribfest go in Niagara Falls, Ontario? So this is the easy way of finding it.
Yeah.
Proceeds of Niagara Falls Ribfest and related barbecue festivals go directly to local charities too. So, but that's the one that was traditionally from the Rotary.
Yeah.
So you need $15,000 from the city so you can generate, charity. So why doesn't the city just give $15,000 to the charities that they do?
Yeah, absolutely, good question, and we'll leave it there. I think. Okay, Canada's cleared the NATO 2% bar.
Finally.
After years, and Carney fulfilled the promise after intense Allied pressure by across NATO. But there's been a lot of questions about NATO after the last year and a half anyway.
Well, this is the one thing that Trump brought up in his first administration, and he was completely right about it. Yeah. Now, the other presidents prior to this had complained vehemently, well, not completely vehemently, but put pressure on all the different NATO countries to come up with money. The U.S. would be spending about 3.5% on their budget, defense budget, but Canada under. And this was really surprising to me. Under Harper dropped it down to less than 1% when he was in, and he's a conservative. And on the surface, he would be definitely for NATO and putting the money out there. But privately, they cut it back because they wanted money for other things. Now there is no excuse, and if the one thing that I think Donald Trump was totally right about, maybe for the wrong reason in his particular case, but because he's all about him. But it was very true that NATO had leaned way too heavily on the United States.
Yeah,
the United States let them lean on them too, which is one of the things that was out there. They didn't put a lot of pressure on. Donald Trump comes along and says, "Hey, you pledged 2%." You're nowhere near it. Come on, let's do the 2%. And then he said, no, 3%, no, even 5%. So everybody agreed with him finally after the Russians invaded Ukraine. All of a sudden, everybody gets worried. And now they have lots of money for armaments. Canada barely squeaked into the 2%. Remember, under Trudeau, they weren't even going to reach that until the 2030s. That's how numbskullery he was. He didn't get it. Yeah, this is important, and our defense budget will probably go up to 5% because look at the world we have today. We've got a war in Iran. We've got festering Middle East that never seems to stop fighting. We have the war in Ukraine that seems to be a forever war that ain't going to quit anytime soon. We have potentials for conflicts here and there and everywhere. And of course, we do now have the threatening U.S. Going to take over Greenland. And they're saying that that's because nobody can protect Greenland more than us, so we're going to take it. So the Canada and the other countries have come up with a northern defense plan, but they're not going to be able to do that unless they come up with the money required to do that.
Yeah. Well, and they've also, and as we were talking last week, they've also enacted purchases of new planes. So they've got about 18 planes that they've bought recently, but they've still got another 80 planes to buy.
Submarines too. Now, I don't know if the contract has been, there's a German and a South Korean company vying for the submarine contract that Canada has. Canada has like three submarines, and only one of them works. They're old, beat up submarines they bought from the UK.
I thought they were all former UK Second World War submarines, weren't they?
No, I think they're actually nuclear, but they're just not very good. And the UK says, "Oh, we got these for sale, a really great deal." And Canada's, "Well, okay, we'll buy it." And then they've had nothing but problems with it ever since.
That's why the UK were selling them.
Yeah, just like Canada's was buying a used car. They're buying used submarines by honest UK submarine dealer. Come and get your used submarine, and we'll honest King Charlie. We'll give you a deal.
Yeah, and basically you look at the maintenance record on this. It's been in the dry dock every time it is anywhere near Britain. It's in the dry dock. Yeah.
And what does the Trudeau go over there and says, "Did you change the oil?" He says, "Oh, sure, we changed the oil." Okay, I'll buy it.
Yeah.
Can we have a different color? Can we paint it a different color?
Yeah. So
we have a chartreuse.
Well, I also have to wonder, actually, there's been a lot of speculation about the end of NATO in recent months.
I don't think NATO's going to end because once Trump gets out of the way, like all the generals and all that know that the NATO thing is still going to be strategically important for the U.S. defense. So for them to discontinue NATO would be counter to their strategic. And Trump's only going to last another couple of years anyway, so they're kind of looking beyond him to somebody that is a little bit smarter, but at least in that realm. So I don't think the generals and all that seem to think that removing, because basically NATO is a source of a lot of allegiances, allies for the United States, and once Trump's out of there, they're not going to assault those allies anymore. They're going to push them to pay what they have to pay to keep the alliance going. But as I said before, they're going to need these countries to pony up more, because they're going to have to shift a lot of their focus over to the Pacific. But in the meantime, they don't want Europe to collapse. Europe is a good, huge market for them, for one thing, for their goods, and they make money trading with Europe. So, and it is strategically placed.
Yeah.
So you don't. So in reality, the generals in the military will know that that's important. Yeah,
exactly. And the thing is, it's the source of old money, of course.
Well, that I don't think is so much of an importance as the fact that they're strategically placed. right beside.
The old money and the strategy come together in some respects.
What does the old money have to do with it? Can you explain that to me?
Well, it just some of the old money stuff is still around because of the fact that that's what kind of gives places like Switzerland and UK and France and Germany, well, France more than Germany, a bit more power, because the old money still buys things that some of the new money doesn't enter into those markets.
I'm gonna have to look something up because I have no idea what you're talking about there.
Well, there's certain influences that the old colonial.
I know what you mean by old money in the United States. Old money meaning the old traditional families like the Vanderbilts, the Kennedys, the Roosevelts, and the Carnegies and things like that would have that. That was old money, right?
And a lot of
new money later on by new.
A lot of the European aristocracies are also old money, right?
But how much do they play in the economy that would affect the United States?
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
But
well, anyway,
have an impact in NATO anyway. Yeah.
If you get right to it, you know that Europe is strategic. It's very important for the United States, particularly. And what about Turkey? They might want to they might want to leave NATO. The impression is we've seen how much Israel controls the United States, at least defensively, and Israel's got a beef with Turkey now, and Turkey is a NATO nation. So there is speculation that the United States want to leave NATO so that Israel can attack Turkey if it needs to without calling the NATO countries in to protect Turkey.
Yeah.
So there's that speculation, because now now that Iran is back on its heels, Syria's out of the question. Egypt's being paid off. Jordan is no longer anything. Lebanon is being crushed. So there's only one major power that can stop the expansion of Israel, and that is Turkey. And they've been fighting. They've been getting sort of more and more aggressive back and forth for a while, particularly with regards to Syria. Even the Israelis have said the next big enemy is Turkey. And the United States, as we've seen lately by what happened to Thomas Massie, is pretty much controlled by Israel money. We see what happened to Thomas Massie, who was a congressman who got elected with 70% of the votes when he was but he got out primaried because there was 60 times more money spent on that race than has ever been put in the Kentucky Congress, the 4th district. Up until this race, it was a couple $100,000 each candidate would come up with. It was $34 million this time, and it was and huge amounts of this money came from the Israeli lobby. So because the Israeli lobby controls Trump, it has fed him lots of money. So he went on the offensive. Also, he wants to get rid of him because he's one of the few Republicans that have had courage enough to bring up the Epstein files, courage enough to bring up the money squandered by the United States in Gaza, giving them bombs, and one of the few Republicans that denounced Gaza as a genocide. Mm-hmm. So the big Zionist money came in huge, and to fight them, and they won. And we can see that the United States, Trump is actually kind of pretty much controlled by Netanyahu, and that big Zionist money is very important to the Republicans. So I don't know. That's a sad thing overall.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. The Pentagon has walked away from the Canada-U.S. Defense Board, stating that Canada failed to make credible progress on military spending. The irony is we just brought it up to the 2% level.
Yes, well, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter at all. It didn't matter what the truth really was. We saw what they did with the fentanyl thing.
Yeah.
Canada was responsible for a tiny, tiny part of the fentanyl that went into the United States. So they put huge tariffs on us because we didn't do enough to stop fentanyl. And well, of course, that power was taken away from the president from the by the Supreme Court. But that's what they'll do. They'll commit. They'll say, "Oh, look, you're not doing enough about fentanyl." They won't even talk about how much drugs come from the United States into Canada. There is this cross-border trafficking. Some fentanyl comes into the United States from Canada, but it's a tiny amount compared to what comes in from other areas. They produce their own fentanyl, and some of that fentanyl comes from the United States into Canada. So, and a huge amounts of cocaine and heroin come from the United States into Canada. So they took that small amount of fentanyl that went across the border and made a big deal about it, lied and exaggerated about it in order to have a reason to put enormous tariffs on us. So with this defense thing, the Canada-U.S. defense thing that's been going on since 1940, before the U.S. was in the war, Canada was already in the war. So they made this Canada-U.S. Defense Board to protect North America back in 1940. It's been going on ever since. So they've come up with very weak ideas of why they have to dismantle it. They want to dismantle it because they want to say, oh, well, Canada doesn't do enough, so what's the point of even being this? They don't want to be a part of it because the decisions were made by Canada and the United States. They want to make all the decisions on their own, including taking Greenland.
Yeah. And I think that's the truth behind this at the end of the day. We're heading
they don't want any objections to their expansion into Greenland. Donald Jesus Trump wants his legacy. He wants to expand the borders of the United States. He wants that legacy. So he's picking on really, really weak countries like Greenland, Cuba, and Venezuela. So, okay.
All right. Ricky asked the question, why is Trump loved in Europe and not in Canada? I don't think he is loved in Europe at all.
No, he's not loved in Europe. He's not. There are some there. As a matter of fact, what has happened of late, he was in among the right-wing groups in Europe. He was pretty popular for a while, but when they came up with the tariffs and things against the Europeans, then the right-wing groups started to change their course. So the right-wing groups find it problematic supporting Trump now because of his tariff regime and what kind of pressures he's putting on the average European. So the right-wing groups are trying to distance themselves from Trump at the time, even though they might employ a lot of his ideas. They have to step away from him and not be identified with him. And that's partly because of the Gaza thing and his weakness there. A big thing to do with, he promised peace in Ukraine, could not deliver. He said he could do it in a day. He couldn't deliver. It's been well over a year now. He can't touch it. Gaza, big mess there. There's still bombing people. People are suffering. Wasting is happening. No journalist has yet ever been allowed into Gaza.
And let's be honest about this border peace that he came up with. $1 billion to sit on the board as a permanent member of the border peace. Carney turned it down. Blair turned it down. And the border peace has sunk into oblivion.
Well, yeah, because if it had real aspirations to bring about peace, but it seemed to be more of a money grab.
Yeah. It's a money club.
Yeah. So
pays $1 billion to be a permanent member of the Board of Peace. Yeah, I don't think so somehow.
Yeah. So Yeah. So for a time, among the right-wing groups in Europe, Trump got quite a bit of praise. I think even Nigel Farage has to be careful of how he speaks of Trump right now, particularly when Trump is hammering the UK with tariffs, or has tried to, and anyway, we can get back to that later. But yeah, no, Trump's popularity has waned quite a bit. It's even as Trump's popularity has waned among the conservatives in the United States. They're in a real quandary now, where they didn't. The peace president wasn't a peace president at all. He's gotten involved in a big war. The short-term pain for long-term gain. Recently, he has said, "Whoa, the short-term pain is nowhere near as painful as we thought it would be. It's much less painful. The short-term pain, of gas prices is much less than we anticipated." So he's stuck now. He's stuck in that Iran thing, and I hope that ends.
Talking about gas prices, though, while you're talking about gas prices, I've been doing some research and talking to some friends in Africa, pretty much across Africa, whether it's South Africa, Kenya, or other places in Africa. There are major shortages of gas right now.
Of course. There are whole economies all over the world that are suffering huge because of fuel shortages and also because of fertilizer shortages.
Yeah.
What we don't realize, and we here think, oh man, we're going to pay more for gas, and that's hurting the average person. So hurting the average family that's got to fill up their car and get to work and so on.
Yeah.
They have to pay so much more because of this war. Now, but the rest of the world has a lot more hurt. Okay, see you later, Gary. Have a great day. So the rest of the world has a whole lot more hurt going on. Poor people, and we mentioned this before, and this is what keeps, unfortunately, in the West, we have very little affinity with poor people. I mean, we think, okay, we're paying more and that's bumming us out. We might not buy that case of beer we're going for the weekend, or we're not going to go to the movie so much. We're going to cut back that way. We're talking about in the developing world. You're talking about people not eating.
Yeah.
Not eating at all and not being able to conduct business.
Yeah. Thank you, Garrett. Thank you, Rick. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Moving on. Who declared the Ebola outbreak in the Congo and Uganda as an emergency of international concern?
Yes. Unfortunately, Ebola has raised its ugly head again. And of course, Congo is a great breeding place for Ebola. And there's a particular kind of strain that's going around now. But Ebola is one of those unsophisticated viruses. Basically, it kills its host most of the time. So there's a limit about how much it can spread. And it's spread by bodily fluids, which is another thing. It doesn't get airborne, which is a mercy. But in the meantime, it is terribly deadly, and we just have to, watch out for it. The WHO and are on the case. I don't know how much they can do, how much pain they can alleviate, but I don't know.
Well, 80 deaths. Normally, when we're talking about Ebola, we're talking about a lot of concern, but it's not normally like 80 deaths. We're talking about a dozen deaths at the most. But it's more of a concern about the possibility of it spreading, and normally when it does spread, they isolate.
Well, yeah, isolation is a big deal with Ebola. Unfortunately, what happens when you have an Ebola outbreak? Now, I talked to a a miner, actually an accountant for a mining operation, who did a lot of his work in the mines in and around Africa. And I was talking to him when I was in Ghana, where I could see the signs on the walls, the posters on the walls, warning people about Ebola and how you get sick and so on, and how it's all very illustrated because not everybody knows how to read or write, so it's all done in pictures. And he told me that the Ebola outbreak happened, and basically we were told let stay away from other people. But what happens is the people with Ebola get sick and they go see the doctor. Well, they travel in what is called trotros. Trotro is a van. It's very common in West Africa. A van, a crowded sort of tourist van almost, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a long box van that has a lot of seats in it, and it's called a trotro because it's cheap transportation for the average person.
Yeah, and these are set up basically. They're private. They're privately run. They cram many people as they can get into these mini buses. Possibly, got 15 or 20 people in them when they're only built for probably 10.
Yeah. So they can jam a lot of people in. So when you have to go to the doctor, that's how you get there. But while you're in that crowded vehicle, you're spreading the disease.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you had the other outbreaks of Ebola were terrible because that was happening. And then they were taking the people, and in West African cultures, you take care of the sick person of your family. So they were taking the Ebola victims, taking them to a quarantine place, but they were being broken out by their family, who felt it was their responsibility to care for them, which made the Ebola spread even more among the family members. So those are the kind of things they're facing right now in West Africa, is they have to make sure that everybody realizes that you don't want to connect with other people in your family, even though it's tradition of your family to take care of you. You have to quarantine. That's a hard thing for them.
The other thing, of course, is that there's been 2 cases in Kampala and 1 in Kinshasa.
Yeah, so this is, like I said, Ebola is fortunately one of those viruses that kills itself off, because quite often it kills the host. And the previous strain was like a 90 or 95% kill rate. If you got it, you died. So, but when the person dies, if you can isolate enough of them and they die or get better, one of the two, then it can't spread it. But the problem is spreading it. And so that's a concern. It's always been a concern, though. There's also hantavirus, of course. That's becoming a bit of an issue too, because that is one that can be spread person to person. So that can be a bit of a problem coming forward too. And there's all kinds of conspiracy theories already surrounding hantavirus. So
unfortunately, that's true. Okay, right. Trump called off the Iran airstrike yesterday.
Well, I'm glad he did. I think everybody's glad they did. I don't know how there's going to make an exit strategy out of this thing. He pretty much, most of the press is pretty much assured that Netanyahu set the trap, and now Trump is stuck in this trap of a prolonged war. Israel will not be happy until the whole country disengages and becomes destabilized. That's their goal. Their goal was to destabilize Syria, and it happened. The goal was to destabilize Iraq, and that happened, and also to destabilize Libya, which also happened. They want They want Iran destabilized in the same way. The problem here is the United States. They're willing to destabilize Iran, no matter how much U.S. blood or treasure it takes. That's the big problem. And now they're stuck in a situation. What can their next move be? So now the Straits of Hormuz are open to anyone that Iran says it's okay to enter. And if you've noticed that Chinese tankers have gone through there and not been stopped by the U.S. And that was during some of them were transitioning when Trump was in Beijing talking to Xi. So are the U.S. going to stop the Chinese tankers coming and going that are full of Iranian oil? The Iranians say everybody that's not associated with our enemies can come and go as they please. The U.S. has got a blockade that will block everything that the Iranians sell. But if they sell it to the Chinese, are they going to block the Chinese ships?
Yeah.
What options does Trump have at this particular point in time? He doesn't have much. He can go and start bombing the crap out of Iran again. If they do that, I think they're going to try to target the next layer of leadership. I think they're trying to identify where they are and knock them out. That would be part of the strategy. I don't know if it's a good idea for them to bomb the crap, but what else have they got?
Yeah.
They've got to go. They've got to go huge, or they got to back away. One of the two.
Yeah. The interesting thing, of course, is that this weekend, and it's been reported in a couple of newspapers, Iran's parliament is discussing putting a 50 million euro bounty upon the heads of Trump and Netanyahu. Right.
Well,
this has been reported in the Daily Mail and the Daily Telegraph in England, but and one Indian newspaper, but very few other newspapers.
I don't think they'll actually do it. I mean, I think it's a scare tactic, basically. But let's put it this way: Trump has had three close calls. He's got his ear shot. He had a guy on his golf course and a few other attempts. If they were pros, they would have got him. If they were Iranian pros, they would have got him in both of those different cases. So obviously the Iranians have not given the green light for an assassination, because they could have done that a few times already.
Yeah.
We can see that because these amateur bumpkins and fools have tried to take out Trump, and they failed. I mean, one came close, hit his ear, and killed the person behind him. The other one was laying in the golf course and would have been able to take him out, except that he was so dumb that he didn't camouflage himself. A pro wouldn't have done that. A pro would have been able to go in and take the shot and got, without anybody even noticing. So there's the difference. I don't think they've really got assassins ready for Trump, because that would make things even worse for them. The devil you know and the devil you don't know, there's a big thing there. And if they're associated with any kind of attempt, that would license the U.S. to drop nukes on them,
Yeah. Well, okay, so it also doesn't change the situation in Gaza.
No, but Iran is only mildly interested in Gaza.
Or Lebanon, come to that matter.
Lebanon, no, it wouldn't do anything there either. Yeah. It may even harden the view. What are these? I haven't been reading these. Betty Zoom says, back in the old days, they'd been fighting forever. Did it stop? Well, it depends. It depends. For a very long time, the Ottoman Empire controlled all that area up to the borders of Iran, and it was relatively peaceful. The religions coexisted. For instance, Jews, Christians, and Muslims coexisted pretty much in the Middle East, all over the Middle East, from Morocco all the way to all the way to Iraq, and the reason they did that because the Muslim faith recognizes Christianity and Judaism as people of the book. So so that was one thing. They weren't fighting sectarianly. Power plays, yeah, they were doing that, of course, like big powers always do. But anyway, yeah. So there's always, unfortunately, what the colonists have done after the dismantling of the Ottoman Empire. That was a power vacuum, and Britain and France particularly started piecing up the different areas. Have a great day, everyone. Hi, Karen. So they started piecing up the different areas of the Middle East, but you can see they did the divide and conquer thing. So in Iraq's situation, the British created Iraq, and what they did is they mixed Kurds with Sunni Arabs with Shia Arabs. So they had three distinct cultural groups that they could use against one another. Divide and conquer. In Lebanon, you had half Christian and half Muslim. Part of that Muslim was the Shia Muslim. All right, so they had the division between the Shia and the Sunni, and of course in Palestine,
a typical
Muslims
British tactic.
and Jews.
It's been a typical British tactic with the closure of the British Empire, of course. Not that Iraq was anything but a protectorate.
Well, the thing is, every colonizer does the same thing. The United States is probably doing the same thing right now, somewhere looking for the divide and conquer thing to happen. The French did it. The Romans did it, for crying out loud. Julius Caesar was very famous in the divide and conquer strategy.
Yep.
And unfortunately, that's part of the reason why they continue to fight. That's why the Kurds were never given a country. The Brits thought that would be a good idea to give them at one time to establish a Kurdish homeland for the Kurds. They decided against it, which means that they were constantly looking for a homeland, and they're in northern Iraq, southern Turkey, parts of Iran and Iraq, and so that never got resolved. And they're always conflicting. The Sunni Muslims in the center of Iraq are constantly at odds religiously with the Shia Arabs, or also called the Swamp Arabs, in the southern part of Iraq. So you have all these potential conflicts, and then you have idealistic nonsense going on, like the ISIS and Al Qaeda and all that superimposed on top of that, which makes it like a constant wick for something to go awry.
Yeah. All right. Time for us to end.
Yes, and everyone, and I'd like to remind you of Gaza, like I do every day. Gaza is not getting any better. There is wasting happening. Children are feeling the effects of wasting, meaning they don't get enough food. Rick's talking about the IRGC. Yeah, well, the IRGC, of course, they're the ones that seems to be mostly in control in Iran. They are an issue too. They're an idealistic problem. They are a Shia Islamic, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, So anyway, and for exchange, I don't know what that means from Betty. But anyway, thanks everyone for listening. And I'd just like to put up Gaza again, as I said before. It's not happening. The Israelis are being sort of centered out worldwide now. The Eurovision, apparently, where the Israelis were allowed to perform, was the worst attended ever because of that. So politics is getting in everything. What we really want to do is just kind of get away from that apartheid action that's happening in Israel and Palestine right now. I don't know how they're going to solve that. It is like deep deep. It's been happening since 1897, when the advent of Zionism. So I don't know how they're going to fix that up. But anyway, let's hope that somehow, somewhere they can. So without further ado, I bid you adieu. Have a great day, everyone.